Kelly Knox is with us. Hi, Kelly.
Hi. How are you guys?
Oh,
So good.
great. How are you?
I'm good too. Had that surprise trailer today. I was all excited.
What did you think of the trailer?
A friend texted me to be like, "Have you seen this?" And I was like, "What are you even talking about?"
Yep.
I had no idea. I'm pretty excited to see everybody come back. Like Jason Isaacs is the Grand Inquisitor, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. So, yep, very excited.
So great. Well, Kelly, for the handful of people who may not know you because they apparently haven't been to a bookstore this month yet, tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that you do.
I am, gosh, how do I start? I'm a writer for StarWars.com. I've written some nonfiction books for Star Wars. My latest one is Star Wars Dad Jokes, and I have the Return of the Jedi. I'm a co-author on the Return of the Jedi Visual Archive coming out the 23rd. But yeah, I'm very happy to say I've gotten to write a lot of books for Star Wars and a couple for Marvel now too. So.
And you've also done, the Marvel books. And the Marvel Monsters book is one of my son's go-to book. He grabs that book off his shelf all the time. He loves that. So, even if it's just like to just look at and that's the cool thing about that book. And in the Return of the Jedi Visual Archive. I remember when I was a kid, my favorite franchise, if I could just look at pictures of it, like I could just spend hours and hours, and the pictures in the Marvel Monsters and of course the Return of the Jedi book and your new book, which dropped, what was it, yesterday, right? Or the day before, Tuesday.
Yeah, a couple days. The second, not April Fool's, but the second. It almost hit.
It should have been April Fool's. And kind of
I'm surprised they didn't do it. But yep, Star Wars Dad Jokes.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about Star Wars Dad Jokes.
So this book, for people who don't follow me on Twitter, it actually started as a series of tweeted dad jokes. During lockdown, I started tweeting some terrible Star Wars themed puns. Jokes. I don't know how often I've told this part of the story, but when my daughter was in elementary school, from like 1st to 5th grade, whenever she learned how to read, I would put a dad joke in her lunchbox every day. I would handwrite, and I would just Google it. I wasn't writing them then. I would just, Google one, handwrite it, and throw it in her lunch bag, and she would share it with her friends at the lunch table. And so I already had like a mental list of those kinds of jokes. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of easy for me to start Star Wars-fying existing, classic jokes and things like that. And so when the lockdown hit, I was tired of all the doom scrolling, and all we saw online was, horrible negative things. So I was like, I'll just be one little bit of positivity on somebody's timeline. So I made it a goal to post one terrible dad joke a day. I think I made it like a year and a half or something, a little over a year, I remember. And very, very kind people said, "Oh, this should be a book." And then eventually Lucasfilm said, "Hey, this should be a book." And they got me in touch with the editor. And as way of a pitch, I sent a spreadsheet I'd been keeping of my Twitter dad jokes because I didn't want to repeat any, and I'm a big nerd, so I had them all saved up. So that was my pitch. It was terrible because it was formatted for Twitter, but they were in. So that's how the book came about. The book is like 80-90% new jokes, even though I sent those over first. It's almost all new jokes. So
yeah, I have to say I was impressed as I went through them that I didn't find too many, although I did find the one that got the biggest groan from my daughter was where does the Emperor keep his armies in his sleeveys?
That was the first one I ever told. That's what.
Okay. It needs to be told, and we're going to get to it in a minute because I'm going to ask Kelly if she has a favorite. I'm going to make her pick one. I have mine bookmarked as well, and if she wants to see at what point in the book it is, that may or may not tell her anything. But I have one, and Pete, you're going to really appreciate it as well. But Kelly, let's talk about this for a minute. You obviously, like you said, this came during lockdown. This came during a time where, of course, doom scrolling is a thing. You're sending your kid to school in a world that is, struggling and dealing with a lot of difficult stuff. You've written a bunch of other stuff. You've done craft books. You've done Be More Obi-Wan. Like, talk about the process of writing this book, other than, of course, like you said, your spreadsheet, which I love. The process of writing this, putting it together, what it meant as far as who you are as not only a Star Wars fan, but as somebody who has the opportunity to do this kind of writing.
So it was definitely a different process because most of my other books are heavy in research, and this one was, basically all me. There is reading, tons of other jokes to kind of get the idea, to get, what makes a dad joke a dad joke. Has to be clean because you're going to tell your kids. It has to have a good pun, and it was always important to me to make sure I'm never. And the same with online, I'm never making fun of Star Wars. Like, it's always out of love. It's always, that kind of attitude. So those kinds of things were the only research I did. But then when I was actually writing the jokes, it was a very interesting time because, as you might have guessed, with me having 3 books out this month, I was working on 3 books at the time. And so I would have to switch mental gears, but I did okay, I think. But with most of the puns, I would start with maybe a few different things, either a character or a character name that's funny. Poor Admiral Akbar got probably the most jokes told about him because I just think he's hilarious. Or like an idiom, like I said, like Yoda being swamped. Like, if you think about something be swamped, how can you turn that into a pun? Like, that kind of was my thought process. So, and then I had a list of characters I wanted to get in, beyond poor Admiral Akbar, which is where I got lucky enough to get Dr. Afra in there, and I wanted to make sure to have a few about Rey in there too, so nobody was left out. So yeah, it was a very different process, not as much research heavy as I've done in the past. So it makes it a little scarier because it's all from me.
For sure. And it is such a fun thing, and I'm going to pull mine up just because I can in this moment. I have a favorite, and I've read through this whole thing. I was so thankful to get this book sent to me early. I've got the cool postcard.
There's a postcard?
I got a little postcard. Yeah, from Chronicle.
The publisher sent us a couple of postcards. Yeah,
they sent me a couple cool postcards.
That's cool.
So, but I had to save it, and it's this one. How did director Krennic discover and recruit Galen Erso to finish the Death Star? He was outstanding in his field. The layers to that joke are like, it's chef's kiss. Like, it's so great. It's one of those things that's what a dad joke is. And as a dad myself, hit me right in, my Star Wars feels, my dad joke feels. It has to feel good. Certainly, when you get that feedback from people who are tagging you online, connecting with you with some of that same kind of stuff, to get that to come back, like, is that fun to feel those kind of bouncing back at you?
Yes. So the most fun is when I hear about parents telling kids and kind of trolling their kids with them. I just love that so much. Maybe that's just a parent thing. That's my favorite thing. I love when people tag me in their jokes, like, if this is my legacy in Star Wars, I'll take it. If other people tell more jokes instead of, being angry or adding to their doom scrolling too, I'll gladly take that. But yeah, most happiness for me from this comes from hearing how they can make their kids' eyes roll, or get the good groan out of them. I just think that's the best. My daughter's immune; she's used to. She's like, whatever.
So have a lot of fans, Miss Punda Baba. Have they been?
Oh no.
Yeah. So have a lot of fans been like hitting you with their own like dad jokes, like, just to get your approval, because you are the queen of this. So I just
Yeah, no, I get tagged in quite a few, like, has Kelly seen this, or Kelly needs to see this, and I'm always like, yes, I did need to see this. Thank you for tagging me. But yeah, that's one of my favorite things, actually, is to see other good gags online. I love it.
That's great. Very cool. So maybe give us a little bit of your Star Wars history. How did you get into Star Wars, and when did it sort of like strike you that it's something that you love?
So I'm very old, and I saw Return of the Jedi in the theaters.
Ooh.
That's the first movie I remember seeing.
Okay, so that means I'm very older. So
it's in my memory. I was 6 years old because the film strip broke because I don't know if everybody knows, but back then it was a physical film strip that could break, and ours did in the middle of the Ewok stealing the speeder scene. So that moment is burned forever in my memory. So that's my earliest Star Wars memory. And then
when did it break? Because this happened to me too.
No, really, when Paploo steals the speeder bike in Return of the Jedi, that's when it snapped. The film strip snapped.
I think mine was during, I think it was Luke and Leia's speeder bike chase. That's when mine happened.
And it stays with you. Twice. I don't know how. Yeah,
it happened twice. The other time was during the fight between Vader and Luke.
That is awesome.
Yep.
That is awesome. They must have been running those projectors hot, maybe.
Constant. Just constantly
doing. So yeah, that's my earliest memory of seeing Star Wars in the movie theater. I don't know if I saw the ending ever. I don't know if they like taped it back together. I can't remember that much, but when we would watch it over and over again on like VHS tapes recorded off HBO. Since you couldn't really watch the movies like on your phone, then I had to listen to the soundtrack over and over, and that was how I would watch it in my head. And so that was kind of it. That's still to me, I can still watch A New Hope just by hearing it from those days. And so I think that's really when, you know, my fandom started, because if I was sad or scared or lonely, I would just put on my headphones and listen to the music and feel like I was there. And so I've still always had that kind of special, safe feeling, I guess, with Star Wars. And that's kind of where it started. But back then, girls weren't really supposed to be into Star Wars or talk about Star Wars. So it was a very private kind of fandom for me for a very long time. It wasn't really until college, I think, that, you know, I finally put like a poster up on the wall or whatever. Fast forward to, you know, I started working. I had a career in community management, and I ended up on Star Wars Galaxies, and that was my first Star Wars job. But then I quit to be a stay-at-home mom, but I was still freelancing, and that led me to StarWars.com and to where I am now. So it's a long, winding story, but there's a little bit of Star Wars along the way every step.
It's so fantastic. And I want to hone in on one thing, because you talked about obviously those earliest experiences being Return of the Jedi and the speeder bike and the tape breaking and all that, which is such a great full circle moment, because now not only do you have dad jokes coming out, but you are one of the 3 authors who worked on the Return of the Jedi Star Wars Visual Archive. And we had we said this last week. The only reason you weren't on with us last week with Clayton and ST was because we already had scheduled to be on this week to talk about dad joke. But you were the other part of that triad, you know, putting that book together. So you got to work on a Return of the Jedi Visual Archives book, and you've done kind of a variety of things. You've done craft stuff. You've done Be More Obi-Wan, which is very inspirational. You've done dad jokes, which is very silly. And then we have Return of the Jedi Visual Archives, which is certainly like archival work. So talk to us a little bit about certainly a movie that had a big impact on you, but getting to work on a book that delved, you know, so deeply into exactly that same movie.
That was not lost on me, that my earliest memory, and I now got to work on the kind of book that I always love, like you guys said when you're a kid, the ones that you can just open up and start flipping through and learning about characters. Like that's why I love working in nonfiction, because those were the things that I liked reading as a kid. And so for Return of the Jedi, the Visual Archive, this was the most behind the scenes type book I've worked on. Everything else has kind of been like characters, things like that. And so this one was really fun to work on and learn about the real life people behind the book. And then, you know, getting to draw the connections, which I'm sure Clayton and ST probably talked about with y'all, about how, you know, Return of the Jedi would establish things that in Star Wars that, you know, we're still exploring now. Things like, you know, it went from Return of the Jedi to Ewoks to Night Sisters in the Ewok movie. And now we've just saw today the Night Sisters coming back for, you know, Tales of the Empire. So it was really fun to trace those kinds of things. And every project I work on is a lot of fun, but this one was, I guess not more meaningful, but just a lot more personally interesting to see how the people who worked on it got the movie made, because I feel like all 3 of these, they were just flying by the seat of their pants. And I still appreciate every second of these movies that we did get, knowing now how hard they worked on those.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Did it change the way you looked at that movie? Certainly, as somebody who grew up with it, who connected with it, certainly in an early on specific way. But like we asked Clayton and ST last week, and of course, there's that thing of like, yeah, you go back, you revisit it that many times as you're writing, and there's a moment where you need a timeout. Was that your situation, or did it even give you a deeper appreciation?
There was a lot of things. So I used to say I would get Star Wars'd out when I worked on Star Wars Galaxies. That doesn't happen
Sure.
anymore. Maybe now because it's always there.
Right.
But I learned a lot of things I didn't know about Return of the Jedi, things that like I didn't even know you could still find out. Like I remember I learned about the women who filmed as pilots in the cockpits for Return of the Jedi, where they eventually got cut. But you can watch their deleted scenes right now on Disney Plus. Like you can literally go to the extras right now on Disney Plus and watch it. So stuff like that I discovered, scenes that I'd never seen before, interviews I'd never read. I think there was the earliest script meetings with George Lucas that I had read. Like all that stuff was just so much fun to dive into, and it was just it was stuff that I didn't know and stuff that I wasn't expecting, that it kept the whole process was pretty fresh, even though it's a movie I've seen 100 times.
For sure.
Chris,
if you guys haven't seen it, it's like textbook size.
Oh yeah.
I was really surprised when I saw it.
I did a little TikTok and YouTube short review of it, a little 1 minute review, and I started by dropping it on the table because it, like, when I heard it was coming out, and I've known Clayton since I've been doing this show, and I heard he was involved in it, and then he was going to be on the show, and they sent me a copy of it. I get this big box,
Huge.
and I was like, "What's going to be in here?" Oh, it's from the publisher. Holy cow! It was, and what I love is there's like little like fold outs and like, my favorite thing in the book is the fake Polaroids of the character, the costuming from Endor. The recreation of those Polaroids is fantastic. So it's really good stuff. Fantastic. And as I told Chris, Clayton and ST last week, and I will say it to you because it's important that you hear it. I've been collecting Star Wars books since, as long as Chris and Nick have, since that was all we had. As you said, the story of Star Wars, record, this was my way to keep up with Star Wars. And those books were the other way. And this book deserves to be on the shelf with every one of those. It's such a great collection of all things Star Wars, especially Return of the Jedi. But it looks good, and it's just a fantastic. I put the link in the chat for people to pre-order it. I can't urge you enough to pre-order it. Go do it now. Yeah. So, Chris, I'm sorry. I feel like I cut you off there.
No, it's all right. It's all right. So you've written a lot of books, like, of course, like the Be More books and craft books and stuff for StarWars.com. What other types of books would you like to tackle? Star Wars wise or otherwise?
So I'm not a fiction writer, so I would never say fiction. But what I would really like to do is kind of a combination where it would be like an in-universe, maybe nonfiction reference book, which I think they've done a couple times. I think there was a High Republic one they did. There's one Ralph McQuarrie did a long time ago called the Illustrated, where is it? It's on my shelf. The Illustrated Star Wars Universe, where it's all written in universe with all of this lovely art. So I think I would really like to do that. One time on Star Wars Galaxies, they let me write some in-game in-universe stuff, and I was just like, I was thrilled for like months. I was so happy. And so I think something like that, I would be really happy. That would probably be as close as I could get to writing fiction. So I think that would be really fun.
So you're not a fiction writer. Have you tried to do fiction? Do you know?
I think I'm just like, my very first writing job was a technical writer, and I think that just kind of, which was terrible. I wrote about like software databases, so I think that kind of just like determined my writing path.
But I mean, it's a great skill set to have because, like I said, that Marvel Monsters thing is it gives
that's
you
close, right?
Yeah, but it gives you the information that you want to know, and it doesn't need to be a story. This is because, like I said, as a fan, just tell me how big this monster is and what it does and why it's where it showed up and who it fought and all that stuff. It's really, really cool stuff. So
yeah, I like that one because it reminds me of what I used to stare at as a kid was the X-Men trading cards in the 90s. Like I had the binder and I would like pull out every card and read their little stats, power graph and all that. I love that stuff when I was a kid. And that's why I like what I do now. Because like you said, I hope that, some kid somewhere likes to pull out one of my books and flip through it and look at the monsters and think.
Well, there's certainly, I guarantee you there's one, and he's probably just down the hallway right now.
Well, it's so great. And Kelly, it's always so wonderful to talk to you. It's always so wonderful when you have a new book coming out, when we see you on social media tweeting out another new joke, not even ones that are in the book. And like we said, like people are just throwing them at you at this point. Before we get out of here, certainly tell us where everybody can find you, where they can order the books, not only Dad Jokes, but Visual Archive, all that good stuff. Let us know because we want everybody to check all those things out because they totally are worth it.
Thanks. You can still find me on Twitter at Kelly_Knox. I have 3 books out this month. They're all on Amazon and all the other big retailers. That's Dad Jokes, which is out already, Visual Archive, which is out April 23rd. And the same day I have the Marvel Studios Character Encyclopedia. Wow. Like I said, I was working on all 3 of those at the same time. So
you need a break.
Things are interesting there. I had to switch a lot of mindsets. And then at the end of the year, there's a big updated Star Wars encyclopedia coming out, so that I got to help be part of the team with that on. So keep an eye out for more information on that. Otherwise, you can find me StarWars.com with crafts and interviews and
Always so great. And I just have to say, you're such a positive light in this fandom. We're so thankful for you, your smile, the happiness that you bring, because we know there's nonsense out there. We know there's people trying to drag it down. But those of us that truly love Star Wars, truly love this community, you're one of those people that help remind us this is what it's all about. And that's what we're fighting for, is something we love, which is Star Wars. So thank you for being a leader in that. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. And we can't wait to see you again sometime soon.
Thank you so much for having me on tonight.